And we're back once again, only on It's Last Call. Last Call with the alcohol, only on the Last Call Podcast.com. And join me here. We got to give, if you want honest, objective opinions on the Cleveland Browns of the NFL, I got to get a guy who is one of the top scouters in the industry, a man who is not afraid to tell people and that, this is it's good, it's bad, not afraid to talk people off the ledge. I give you from Sparks Scouty himself. I give you Bill Sparks. So, Bill, first I'll start off here with the preseason. It was,
Mhm.
yeah, I know it's Game 6, so we'll talk about that differently. But just talk about in general preseason. It feels like a waste of time for a lot of these teams. Like but Chiefs, Seahawks, just didn't start a lot
Mhm.
of their players. Vikings, Broncos. I mean, almost like 15 teams decide, we're gonna set our starters here.
Yep.
Forget about being a scout. As a fan, how frustrating is it when you want to take your kids to a game? You think, okay, it's a day game. It's not, his prices should be a little bit moderate, and nobody's playing. Like I get, you're shaping your starters, but is it getting to the point where the NFL just go screw preseason games? Let's just do, joint practices for 4 weeks.
Yeah, so that's the big thing. I wrote about that a while back over at the Right Way Sports Network, TWSN.net, of which I'm a writer and analyst. That I think preseason games are eventually going to go the way of the dinosaur, and we're going to see a lot more joint practices because the big difference to first from a fan perspective, you hit on it, is you're going to see a lot of second, third string, and even training camp guys that probably won't be on the roster come week one. So as a fan, you don't really want to get too attached to a guy that you may not see on your team ever again. But the second part is with joint practices, you have more control over what you can, kind of work on and drill into. If you want to work a 2 minute drill, you don't have to wait till the 2 minutes of the first half or the 2 minutes of the second half. You can do it whenever you want. If you want to work more on red zone concepts, you don't have to hope that your preseason offense can get you into the red zone. So I think we'll still see preseason games in some function or fashion. I doubt that the NFL will completely just go away with removing them altogether, but it would not shock me if we eventually go to two preseason games and then either we get an 18th game on the schedule in the regular season or we get another week of joint practices, 2 week of preseason games, and then those two preseason games are the bubble roster games. Okay, no starters, no second string, no maybe even no third string. All right, let's throw some camp bodies out there. Let's see who works well in like a live environment that we don't want to waste joint practice reps on.
Like for the fan, because we'll get to a
Hmm.
team in a second, but for the fans, like it's frustrating. You go to this game,
Hmm.
you want to see, even that, and you understand. I'm not gonna. We're not the stars are gonna play the full game, but you want to see at
Yeah.
least a quarter, maybe half. It's the second out of three preseason games, and now it's gotten to the point where, as I said, some teams it's like, we're not even playing our guys first week, second week, even third week. Like you're
Mhm.
having teams almost like the Chiefs, the Eagles. The Vikings, like they're shutting it down. They're not even starting. They
Yeah.
even said we are not playing our starters this week. How do you? I get the owners like money, so they don't want to, really cut price for preseason. But and it's just it seems to be just an fu to the fans where you continually charge high prices for even preseason tickets, and yet you're not giving the fans anything. What do you do? I mean, I get the NFL likes money, but should they do something where it's like, look, we got to reward the fans. We got to, not get rid of the blue collar worker. We don't want this to become
Mhm.
just the sport of the rich and everybody else you can just watch it from TV.
Right. And I think eventually it becomes a fine line of saying, okay, if we, for example, reduce prices, maybe we have preseason specials where, okay, it's two for the price of one or three for the price of two, some sort of fund like that. You risk a slippery slope of a fan saying, okay, well, I'll just pay for a preseason game and then not go to any regular season games, driving them away. But on the same flip side of that coin, you have to put you have to put something, some sort of product on the field for the fan to enjoy. And while preseason games are enjoyable, if you're a casual fan, you don't get a whole lot out of them. I mean, yesterday for the Browns and Eagles, for example, the quarterbacks were Dillon Gabriel, Tyler Huntley, Kyle McCord, and Dorian Thompson Robinson. I could almost guarantee that three out of those four quarterbacks are not going to see any regular season snaps. And I would argue that at least two of those four are not going to be on either team's roster come week one. So ultimately, you have to sit here and you have to say, okay, well, what we're doing in the preseason is helping teams, but it's not helping build the casual fan base. And I think that's going to be a point of contention when we get to the next CBA negotiation is the NFL is going to say, okay, well, if we're going to put that talent on the field for preseason, why don't we just do this? Why don't we say zero preseason games, three joint practices or four joint practices, and then an 18th game? And then you can, as a team, you can then sell tickets to joint practices. You can sell them at a reduced rate and draw more fans in. And then an 18th game, the owners still get that revenue from that additional three or four games that they lost in terms of preseason game. Because when you're looking at preseason game, you have a lot of casual fans that will still go to take their kids, like you mentioned, but it's not sellout. There's not a preseason game that's sellout level caliber, except for maybe the Hall of Fame game. And that's just because we're so starved for football over a 3, 4 month span that people will pay to go to Canton, Ohio and watch third and fourth stringers.
I get the challenge for the coaches. They're looking at this going, look, we
Mhm.
don't want to give away state secrets.
Mhm.
Andy Reid, I know, has said he does not like joint practices. His feeling is, I don't want to have to spend time, worrying about the other team. Will they throw punches? Will they fight? He'd rather just do it himself. Have a Chiefs versus Chiefs. He gets to work with secret plays. They get to practice. Nobody has scouting.
Mhm.
How do you make the coach that? Because at the same time, they don't. They're running base, defenses. They're running stuff, and you're not going to see. You understand, you want them to at least not have a boring game, but they don't want to give away everything. Or all of a sudden, teams like, "Ooh, we're going to scout this. We're going to run this play," and they put this guy in. We can now plan against. Like, how do you make everybody happy to the point where they're going to try at least, but not have to give away the state secrets?
Right. I think how the easiest way you have to do it is you have to open up the training camp. I call it the lockdown. During with the CBA, the way it is, there's a limited number of pad-based practices that you can have as a team. So you see a lot of 7-on-7s, a lot of 11-on-11s, not full padded. I think if you're going to do away with the preseason entirely and go to a solely joint practice model, you then have to take a look at your rookie mini camps and your training camps and say, okay, we're only allowing, for example, three padded practices. We need to effectively take that to five or six because then the coaches can say, okay, well, I have five padded practices between my offense and defense. And that's where like the Andy Reeds, the Shane Steichens, the Nick Siriannis, the Kevin Stefanskis can say, okay, in these five padded practices, we're going to focus on some of the wrinkles that we're going to have in our offense in a live pad versus pad practice. Now, the problem with that is more padded practices means more potential for injuries. So you then have to have the conversation about expanding the rosters in the NFL from the 53, you expand it to maybe 60, 65 to get more guys in there. And yes, you have your training camp expanded rosters out, but allowing to say, okay, well, this NFL team normally carries 53. You have your top 53 guys that you'll consistently carry, and then you have all the camp bodies and everything. But if you have five padded practices, maybe you say, okay, well, maybe I carry 60 guys because I carry an extra wide receiver, I carry an extra running back, I carry an extra linebacker or a defensive lineman. So I think if you're gonna appease the coaches, you need to be able to give them more padded practices. If you're gonna appease the fans, you need to give them access to the joint practices themselves. And if you're gonna appease the owners, then at that point you have to add in the 18th game to be able to make up that revenue, as well as allow tickets to be sold to joint practices. And I think in that scenario, all three would be happy, and it'd be a happy medium for everybody.
Now, let's go to we covered preseason, so let's get to the meat and bones. And the first one we got to talk about
Yeah.
the quarterback that everybody is now either you love him or you hate him. Now we're not talking Shedeur. That's right, Dillon Gabriel. So
Yeah.
All right. So you, as you said, you had some takes that people, if you were if you hated Dillon Gabriel, you weren't going to like, and if you love Dillon Gabriel, you probably would like. So let's start off
Yeah.
here. So he was deadly accurate with this game. No touchdowns, 2 turnovers.
Yep.
How did he do? I mean, from a pure, just objective football, analysis, how did he play that game? Considering he was taking on second teamers, he was playing with second
Yep.
teamers, and this was his first preseason game in his NFL career.
Yeah. So if I had to grade it right now, I would have graded him a B minus. He did everything right in terms of operating the offense that you'd want from a Kevin Stefanski based offense. He threw in rhythm, he threw with timing, he threw with a little bit of anticipation. He got the ball to the marker that it needed to. The reason that it's not higher is because, like you mentioned, those 2 turnovers. When you look at those 2 turnovers, the first one on the interception, it was a levels concept. And a levels concept is you have a first read in the short, second in the intermediate, and a third in the deep. So you read one, two, three. The concern is that due to route timing, the wide receivers getting their routes mixed up, a little bit of press in terms of the coverage, there were multiple receivers in the area. The problem is when you have a levels concept, it's based on rhythm. You can't force a ball in there when it's jam packed because what that means is it's going to lead to a turnover. And we saw that. So that interception, despite what Kevin Stefanski's saying, hey, in the presser, hey, it's not on him, it's on the receivers running the wrong route. That is on him to make that decision. The result, not necessarily on him because the receiver did give up on the ball a little bit. Andrew Makuba made a hell of a play. Let's not discount what he did, made a hell of a play on the pick six. But the decision is on Gabriel to throw that ball in there. The second turnover, which was the fumble, it's an issue because when you look at how that running play was designed, it was designed as a stretch concept or what I like to call a crunch concept, which is a pulling guard as well as the running back is getting to the outside. The problem is the way Gabriel drops back from under center, which was one of his biggest issues as a quarterback in college. He did not do a lot of under center work. A lot of his work was done from shotgun. When he steps to turn to hand that ball off, he's about a yard or two away from where he should be. So then he tries to stretch his arm out to get that ball to the running back. He doesn't have the longest arms to make that happen. So it goes off the elbow of the running back. The fumble happens. Eagles recover. So you take those 2 turnovers out, and it was a very successful day for Dillon Gabriel in terms of operating the offense the way Kevin Stefanski wants to operate the offense. Minimal risk, minimal issue. You add in those 2 turnovers, and you see a guy that you see a lot of good, but you see the limitations. You see the arm talent. He doesn't have the arm talent to be able to push the ball down the field on a regular basis. You see the arm talent. He doesn't have the ability to get it in those tight windows like on that levels concept. You see a quarterback who operated mostly in shotgun throughout his entire career struggled with an under center concept. I've said this about the Browns rookie quarterback conversation. Dillon Gabriel has the higher floor of the two. Shedeur Sanders has the higher ceiling, but his play is more volatile. There is a lot more risk involved. Gabriel is a lot safer. But I think both quarterbacks of Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders are miles, and I mean miles, ahead of where this quarterback room was last year with guys like Deshaun Watson and Jameis Winston and others who either were very risky or just outright dumpster fires. Does that say a lot? No, because this Browns quarterback room is probably still bottom, I would say bottom 6 or 7 in the NFL. And if you told me bottom 3 or 4, I could understand it. But Browns fans should be happy that things are actually trending in the right direction.
I get what some media people and some Browns front office love Detmer. I mean, sorry, Gabriel. He is
Mhm.
Ty Detmer. He's going to be deadly accurate. He's going to make smart plays. He can read the field, and he knows how to take with short with short passes. We saw that
Mhm.
a lot of this game. Is And I don't mean to be mean because I hate being mean here, but is he a guy who's sort of a relic of the past NFL where you could get away with that? You could win with
Mhm.
guys like Brian Snipe, with Ty Detmer, with even guys like AJ Feely. You don't need a big arm. We can just dink and dunk. We have a running game, defense. I'll take care of it. I hate to say, is he just going to be a backup? Because in today's NFL, where you need to push the ball down the field, you need to make that 15,
Mhm.
20-yard throws at times. So those defenses want to just crash up front and clog the middle. Is he a guy that you can have as a starting quarterback because he doesn't have the talent or the physical attributes?
Yeah, exactly that. And when I did my grade on Dillon Gabriel for the NFL draft, he had a fifth, sixth round grade for me because he was a guy that was not going to be a guy you won the game because of. He was going to be a game manager quarterback. My comp for him was a Jeff Garcia-esque guy, or like you had mentioned, like a Ty Detmer, where he's not going to be a guy you win because of, but he's not going to be the reason you lose either. Things have to be perfect around him. You have to have a perfect offensive line. You have to have a solid running game. You have to have a top tier defense to make it work. And if you run into a team that has a top quarterback that forces him to get into a duel, it's going to be a loss. There's no way around it. And for the Browns, what they have right now is they have that top defense. Granted, it slid back a little bit last year, but then they went out and they attacked the issues that they saw, which was an injured JOK with Carson Schlesinger, a defensive line interior that was a little leaky against the run, adding Malik Collins and Mason Graham, and Mike Hall came on late last year. So once he gets healthy, you fix that as well. The big concern, obviously, is the cornerback position opposite Denzel Ward. Greg Newsome looks to have the inside track there, but then now you also have to figure out your nickel corner position. So I think the Browns' ultimate goal is to win in that fashion. Hey, we're going to be in a defensive minded team with a good running game, especially with Dylan Sampson. And then obviously, if and when Quinshad Judkins joins the team after he handles his legal issues, which they've already pretty much been handled, charges have been dismissed, but obviously the team's still doing their due diligence there. This Browns team is not going to win shootouts, which in the AFC, on the bottom third of the conference, you can get away with that. But when you're in your own division alone, you have Lamar Jackson, you have Joe Burrow, then you have Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in your conference. That right there, the recipe for success the Browns are going to have is not going to get them into that portion of the AFC right now because they just don't have that guy who can go one on one with a Patrick Mahomes, with a Josh Allen. Could Shedeur be that guy eventually? Absolutely. Could Dillon Gabriel be that guy eventually? Absolutely not. Could they go with a quarterback in 2026's NFL draft or even 2027's NFL draft? Absolutely. But I think to say that they're going to be as bad as they were last year is a disservice to this team and what they've done to build around it. To say that they are a playoff team this year is an absolute disservice because there are still some issues offensively with this team. The offensive line is older. You have no idea who your pass catchers are going to be outside of Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, and Harold Fannin Jr., who I like, but is a rookie tight end. So I've said all along that this Browns team is going to be probably a 7-win team. And I think after these first two preseason matchups, I haven't seen anything that's going to indicate to me otherwise.
Well, this guy here, love him or hate him, you cannot basically ignore him, and he's now
Mhm.
been caught up in with Gabriel. Gabriel basically talked with CBS sports reporter Didi Kinkawaba, and Gabriel said they are entertainers, they're competitors, and I totally understand that. My job is to compete, and that's what I'm doing. It's something I get used to. I just want to be the best teammate that I can and create an environment where we can all get our best work in.
Mhm.
And right away, as soon as he said that, people thought, "Oh, it's Shedeur. He's talking Shedeur. Shedeur an entertainer here. Shedeur is, he's still high up in a hype. He hasn't learned anything here. Can he catch a break? And how much is he hurt by the fact that there is this very heavy pro Shedeur crowd?
Mhm.
Whether it's friends of Dion, whether it's guys like Mel Kiper, who it's almost becoming like Tebow, and Colin Kaepernick. He is becoming
Yeah.
almost a distraction, even if he doesn't do anything, because the media, the social influencers, they are just either you are pro Shedeur, you're anti Shedeur, you're a hater. Hey, he actually isn't that good. Like, is he just sort of caught in no man's land?
Yeah. So for what it's worth, I was high on Shedeur. Shedeur was my quarterback too, and I had a first round grade on him coming out of Colorado. But you could not deny during the pre-draft process the amount of issues that were around him in terms of not issues that he caused, but the media firestorm. He's Dion's son. Why is he falling out of the first round? Why is he falling out of the second round? The constant fall, the Mel Kiper. And then obviously once he gets to Cleveland, everybody thinks that he should be an immediate starter because of, how well he played at Colorado. And I even said, even as a quarterback two in a first round grade, if he went to a place like Cleveland, I would have recommended that he sit for at least half the year. He was not an immediate starter because there were concerns about him drifting back in the pocket. There were concerns about him holding the ball too long and trying to play hero ball and scramble around and make a play rather than just dirting it and going to the next play. The the thing is that when you're a face of an NFL franchise, like a quarterback position is expected to be, you have to be held to a different standard than the rest of your teammates. This isn't a Myles Garrett. This isn't a David Njoku. This isn't a Jerry Jeudy. This is a quarterback. So you have to understand that the things that you do are going to be more magnetized, or not magnetized, magnified, excuse me. In the things that Shedeur Sanders did during the pre-draft process were magnified. The conversations that he had with some owners, there's one story out there about how he showed up just nonchalant and acted like he didn't want to be there. By all accounts, that was absolutely unequivocally false. I reached out to more than a few people and no one could give me any corroborating information, so I'm throwing that one out the window. But when you see how he acts now, puts his head down, grinds, shows up, still has a little bit of fun. There, you see it. There was a clip that made its way around social media where he interacted with Andrew Barry on the sideline. Barry was very stone faced. Shedeur kind of played around, joked around. That's just who he is. That's his personality. But it rubs people the wrong way because it's not a personality we've seen. By the same token, people said the same thing about his father, Dion. He had a personality that rubbed people the wrong way because it was different. It was flashy in an era where flash wasn't allowed to thrive. The problem is that a lot of the pro Shedeur crowd has kind of hurt him without their knowledge of hurting him because of how they attack people that say Shedeur shouldn't be a starter. Shedeur should wait. The good news is Shedeur hasn't really fed into that. You don't see him retweeting things about, oh, Kevin Stefanski should start Shedeur more. You see him as, hey, I'm a guy. I'm here to work. When I get my opportunity to work, I absolutely will take it and take advantage of it like he did against Carolina. But also, the media as a whole, especially Cleveland, there's been starved for good quarterback play. They've been starved for a guy that can say, hey, this is the Cleveland Browns franchise quarterback. Because if you think Baker Mayfield was a franchise quarterback in Cleveland and that we messed up and let him walk, I'm going to stop you right there because he was not anything close to a franchise quarterback because a franchise quarterback doesn't throw four interceptions on Christmas Eve in Green Bay. Doesn't happen. But besides the point, if Shedeur can develop into the guy that I think he can, he will eventually become that guy in Cleveland. And it'll make all of this noise worth it. The problem is you have to have a team that has an infrastructure around them that says, hey, we are willing to block out the noise and do what we do. We have a process, we have a procedure here. Cleveland is that team because they are used to blocking out noise about quarterbacks. With the Deshaun Watson debacle, the amount of backlash from a PR standpoint that they got, they blocked it out. They said, we're going to block it out. Deshaun Watson, we're going to give him every opportunity to succeed. Eventually, it didn't succeed. Shedeur Sanders is going to get that same opportunity. We're going to block out all the exterior noise. We're going to focus on our stuff in house, and he's going to get every opportunity to succeed. Dillon Gabriel, block out all the noise. He's going to get every opportunity to succeed. And I think that should inspire Cleveland fans hope on they want to get this thing right. This isn't just a going through the motions staff. They want to get this thing right.
We heard recently about the I guess confrontations now I've heard, even though it's basically just, two guys talking. Shedeur Sanders confronted a local radio host, Tony Grossi, who, if you know anything about Cleveland football, he is a entrencher. He is almost basically a long time either beloved or hated personality who talks on ESPN radio, who's covered the Browns. Um,
Mhm.
they had it out after a game, and there wasn't any cursing. It wasn't like he just dropped a people's elbow on Grossi, but it got, let's say, a little bit maybe slightly animated, and it was videotaped. And so Grossi basically said that he didn't intend for a conversation to escalate, and that this was supposed to be private. Somehow, of course, whether it's Shedeur, somebody, they videotaped it and sort of put it on Twitter. I feel bad because I almost want to tell the Breers and all these people, the Tony Kornheisers, Mike Florio's, have you paid attention to the world? This is now the new generation athlete. They
Mhm.
live on social media. This is a way they do things. I feel like the NFL is almost sort of stuck in the 1980s, and now they're realizing, oh crap, this is 2022, 2025, and yeah, we need to adjust to the players. Am I
Mhm.
wrong, or is the NFL media and sort of even the NFL seems they don't know how to handle sort of big personalities like Shedeur, and this whole the social media that it brings with it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Sports media nowadays is so different from the sports media of just 10 years ago and even 20 years ago, where sports athletes are expected to be on 24/7, 365 because in the era of TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram Reels, anything they say can get recorded and put out there. With the whole Tony Grossi and Shedeur Sanders situation, there's a couple things to note is number one, Tony Grossi's even said he initiated the conversation. It's not like Shedeur walked up to him and started giving him an earful. What happened was Shedeur left the podium to walk to the locker room. Tony Grossi says, "Hey, Shedeur, I got another question for you." And then Shedeur said, "Hey, I hope you have a positive question to say about me because you only say negative things," which is a valid point. If you are a person in the media that only has negative takes, you don't highlight the good, you're always highlighting the bad. When you get to an athlete, they're going to be more likely to say, I don't want to talk to you. You have to be able to have some give and take with athletes. You can't just constantly give them all the good because then it looks like you never criticize someone, but you also can't constantly criticize someone because then it looks like you just completely you're a hater. So, you know, the way it came out, I had no problem with it because it was exactly that. It's the same conversations that you would have in an NFL locker room. If you're in an NFL locker room, players are sitting there, they're getting dressed, media walks up, "Hey, I have a question for you." He would say, "Well, I hope it's a positive question." And then he asks the question. It's the same conversation, but the problem is it's been amplified because of social media and how it impacts how sports media works nowadays is with now the lights are always on. You never have an off switch. And for some athletes, that works. When you have guys who have these quote unquote larger than life personalities, they're always on. It works. And then you have guys that they are what I like to call the 9 to 5 business guys. They're stone faced, it doesn't work as well. But you've seen in the past how there's been this kind of shift towards that 24/7 always on. You look at guys like, even like the Peyton Manning, the Eli Manning, the Manning family collective as a whole, during the season they were on, they had their postseason conferences, but then in the off season they would do SNLs. They would do different videos. They would do different things with teams. So I think we're eventually going to start to see a shift where we're going to start to see media interviews be more realistic without being more attacking and combative. And if you look at it through that lens, the Shedeur Grossi interaction, there's not much to it. But if you look at it from the old school sports media way, where athlete A goes to podium, answers 10 questions, walks off podium, goes to locker room, gets dressed, and goes home, yes, it looks like he's attacking him. But it's a difference. It's 2025 in sports media. It's not 2005.
Well, not some things that never change. Quinshawn Jenkins is now free. He's now they're still working on a contract. Isiah Bond is now possibly signing with the Cleveland Browns.
Hmm.
I get it. If you have talent, people put up with everything. They'll look the other way. They'll, as I said, you can put lipstick on a pig and try to make it pretty. Let's start with Judkins here.
Hmm.
What do we know about him? And is his contract signed? And if you're the Browns, do you? I know everybody's guaranteeing everything. Do you have sort of basically second thoughts like, why am I here? Okay, you got off. And we're glad
Yeah.
about that. If it didn't go to trial, but yeah, we really don't want to guarantee all that, Mike, because we are still not sure if this is going to be something that pops up down the line.
Right. Yeah, to answer it, so Quinshon Judkins, from a legal perspective, charges have been not filed in Florida. They're declining to charge Judkins with anything based on the evidence that was found. So now the conversation is, what sort of contract are you going to give Judkins? Because if you look at the top of the second round, there was a whole discourse about the top third of the first round from pick 32 to pick 40, fully guaranteed deals, except for Quinshon Judkins, who hasn't signed his deal. The conversation, by all accounts, is from a team standpoint, is they are going to have the conversation of doing their due diligence and saying, okay, is this a one-off scenario or is this something that could consistently happen? If it's something that can consistently happen, you can point to a lot of the offset languages that teams will put into contracts, the whole Shamar Stewart conversation and debacle about how there was offset language that said he wouldn't get his guarantees if he went to prison or things like that. The Browns are going to likely try to use that offset language to protect them. And Quinshon Judkins is going to say, hey, I wasn't charged with anything. I wasn't punished with anything. So that's going to be kind of a sticking point. The other conversation piece is, what sort of punishment could he see from the NFL, even though he wasn't charged? I would argue that if there is any punishment, it's probably going to be immediately appealed by the NFLPA because, again, not charged. But the NFLPA has their own issues on their own hands with the Rashee Rice conversation, which is another conversation. And it's a piece I wrote about over on TWSN.net, the Right Way Sports Network, about how the Browns are in somewhat of a PR, I won't say a PR nightmare, but it's a PR storm. And it started with the Deshaun Watson debacle, and now it's spilled into Quinshon Judkins and Isiah Bond, is that they are taking risks on players who have issues in their past, who have off-field issues. But we all know in the NFL, talent will supersede any issues that you have. Rashee Rice, Jordan Addison, Quinshon Judkins, Isiah Bond, Deshaun Watson, and it goes further back than that. Henry Ruggs, things like that. Teams will always bet on talent because talent wins games. Games means revenue. That's what owners care about. They hire a PR and marketing department to handle PR and marketing. So that's the concern. From a Quinshon Judkins standpoint, he has not signed with the team by all accounts that I've seen or heard. They're still in conversations, trying to figure out what's the best path forward. Obviously, conversations about what the NFL is going to levy. Obviously, the other one is the Isiah Bond case. Isiah Bond has signed a 3-year deal with the Cleveland Browns, signed it last night, actually. So obviously, you have his conversation as well for the Browns. Again, no charges there, no legal punishment there. So what's the NFL's punishment versus the player conduct policy? And I think that's where we're going to see kind of how this precedent is created, as they were charged with something and then the charges were dropped, or no charges were brought. In this case, in Bond and Judkins case, no charges were actually brought forward because they declined to do any charges. So how does the NFL punish that? Do they say, okay, well, you got charged regardless, or you got in this issue regardless? So then that means every NFL player has to keep their nose 100% squeaky clean. If that's the case, the NFLPA should just be on the standby because there's going to be consistent punishments almost every month. Or, hey, they weren't charged with a crime, therefore we're not going to punish them. That may push a little bit of PR back on the NFL that says, okay, well, you're going to allow people to go out here and get in these types of Judkins and Bonds and Henry Ruggs and Jordan Addison types of situations. And Jordan Addison, obviously, his situation's a little different because obviously he did see some charges, did pay some restitution, so he did deserve that punishment. But that same kind of off-field thing that creates a media PR firestorm. Okay, so I have a Judkins or I have a Bond that doesn't get charged, but they're accused of something, so we should be punished for that. That's where I think the NFL is going to struggle with this punishment. But I think ultimately the conversation goes back to as an NFL fan, this is going to kind of be a new norm. You're going to have more more risk of off-field incident because the Browns have shown again they're willing, and it goes back to the Shedeur conversation too. They are willing to shield out all the bad PR if it means a successful team in the NFL. Granted, it hasn't translated to that. But if you could add a guy with Judkins on-field talent, a guy with Bonds on-field talent, and it translate to an NFL victory, they're going to do their due diligence. They're not going to sign someone who's got multiple charges. That's a whole different conversation. But accusations, if in the NFL, even if you're accused, if you have talent that can win a game, teams are going to be willing to take a chance.
How good is Isaiah Bond? Is he worth it? I mean, I get he has some skills, but there's probably a lot of people going, don't touch the guy. Don't He's not worth it here.
Mhm.
So, in your opinion, is Isaiah Bond worth the aggravation?
So when I did Isaiah Bond's evaluation last year for the NFL draft, and he was a top 100 player for me. He had explosive acceleration. It allowed him to eat up corners quickly. Very natural hands catcher, had good deep speed, and we saw that with his combine time of a 4.39. Not as fast as his teammate Matthew Golden, of course, but this was a guy that had the versatility to line up outside in the slot, create multiple mismatches in an offense, very explosive. The concern was he was undersized, but you know, for me, if I could have gotten that, and we'll take the accusations out of it, if I could get a player of that caliber in the top 125 picks, I take it. You throw in the accusations, now I'm looking at an undrafted free agent that, provided the accusations are false or unfounded, I'll take a chance on that. So, and when you also throw in the Browns wide receiver room that outside of Jerry Jeudy has question marks everywhere. Cedric Tillman, can he stay healthy? Jamari Thrash, what do we have in him? Beyond that, you have Deontay Johnson, who's got the head case. What are we getting with him? Guys like Luke Floria, who's now injured with a hamstring, Gage Larvadane, who, is an undrafted free agent. If it's gonna work anywhere, it's gonna be in Cleveland because other teams are gonna say we've got enough talent here, we're good. But Cleveland has the talent vacuum that they can say, yeah, we'll take a chance on a guy like Isaiah Bond.
Do the Browns take a bad rap for all this in terms of it's easy to pile on, then you realize, oh yeah, the Chiefs, who I love, they re-signed Kareem Hunt last year, even though, as Price Carter said, there was no chance in hell that the Chiefs would bring back Kareem Hunt. But hey, Patrick
Mhm.
Mahomes likes him. They were desperate for a running back, and hey, put some lipstick on a pig and we can sell. I mean, because every team does it, and you could probably go through the locker room and go, well, this, oh my god, this guy nearly killed somebody. I mean, are
Yep.
how bad is it that the in terms of the rest of the NFL does exactly what the Browns do? The Browns just seem to be lightning rods right now because of all their recent ones.
Yes, it's exactly that. It's the because of recency bias. I won't say bias, but because of recency, there's been issues, excuse me, with the Browns because obviously you can go as far back as you want, but guys like Kareem Hunt, guys like Ray Rice. You could go even further back than that, and you could find guys, that have violations of some sort of either conduct detrimental to a team or conduct detrimental to a player's roster or even, some form of suspension or a bad history that they have. Obviously you could even go back as far as Ray Lewis to the Baltimore Ravens with his involvement in the double murder case. In the NFL, they will always prioritize players that can win, that have talent. It's the nature of the business. If you're an owner and you own a business and you say, okay, this player has this issue. They have this off the field issue. They have involvement in a double murder case, involvement in sexual assault, involvement in X or Y. Okay, are they talented? Can they win me a game? Because here's the thing, if they win you a game, that's ticket sales, that's revenue, that's jersey sales. That's closer to the playoffs, which is an additional playoff game, which is additional revenue. Is it the right thing morally? No, it's not. But owners in the NFL are not keen on morals. They are keen on revenue. The NFL is a business, and you have to look at it through that lens. Not saying that the things are okay or not okay, but the NFL is a business. It's going to happen. They're going to continuously prioritize those types of things and say, you know what? I'm not so much worried about an off the field issue, provided it's not a true off the field issue.
Well, our final topic here is something that's more closer to the home of you and me. ESPN Redzone is
Mhm.
now, or sorry, ESPN has bought the NFL Network and the NFL Redzone, and this is starting to scare people because if you thought the NFL Network was very pro NFL, what does that mean now for ESPN? Where, oh, by the way, the NFL has equity in ESPN. All right, talk me out of it here, Bill. I'm getting freaked out a bit here just because we are getting close to state-run media, not only the NFL Network, but now ESPN. And by the way, fans are very upset about because the price will probably go up for all this.
Yeah. So I am on the fence of I think this is good for the NFL because as good as the NFL Network and NFL Red Zone is, it is the NFL. It's the National Football League. It is not ESPN, which is the worldwide media leader in sports, and that's not a tagline. You go and talk about any sport, NBA, ESPN covers it. MLB, ESPN covers it. NHL, ESPN covers it. ESPN has a 24-hour a day network. So you now take the NFL, which is by its own account one of the biggest sports in North America alone, but is also making its way internationally with London and Germany and things like that, and then put them on ESPN with ESPN Red Zone and the equity in the NFL. You now have a media juggernaut that you can have. The big thing is obviously Roger Goodell has said, hey, we're not going to change how we interact from a media journalism standpoint, even though we have this additional equity. We're not going to say, hey, we now have equity. You can't cover this or you can't cover that. It's going to allow for additional eyes to get on the product. And I think that is a perfect way for this merger to occur.
I just want to jump
I,
in. Can I call
yeah,
bullshit? I hate cursing, but I'm calling bullshit with Goodell because that's the thing you and I both know.
yeah,
They're going to put pressure now, and because they have equity, because they are a part owner of ESPN, how much should we worry? As you said, the good part you saying is all this for the fans. The bad part is though, if we thought ESPN was on the fence 50-50 about say exposing but Robert Kraft for another bad behavior in it, say a massage club or Jerry Jones maybe partying hard, having cocaine, hanging out with strippers. Not that meant to
mhm,
happen, but the NFL is now going to use the equity and their influence to go, hey, we need this to be killed. We need more positive spin.
mhm,
Because if you have a 10% equity, you're partners with, and you are ESPN's pay, also paying you a boatload of money, chances are you're going to be able to tell them, hey, we want to have a say in this.
Right. Understandable. 100% understandable and 100% agree. You put in this equity and you say I'm going to be completely hands off. That's a lie. But I think the good news too is that even though ESPN is acquiring these rights from the NFL and they're now going to have a bigger hand in the NFL's coverage, it doesn't mean that we completely go away from never criticizing the NFL ever again. I think what it's going to do is it's going to push people that don't necessarily agree with ESPN's takes. It's going to push them to the smaller media side of things, the guys with podcasts, the guys who write for other media outlets, the what I like to call the Pablo Torres of the world. We've seen Pablo Torres podcast get a lot of notoriety recently for, how he's covered the NFLPA and how he covered the Bill Belichick situation. So I think even though this deal happens and it may be concerning from ESPN's coverage of the NFL, I think ultimately we will still have the I won't say the critical coverage that we need, but we'll have both sides of the fence. It's just one side will be a media juggernaut in ESPN, and the other side is going to force the fan to go out and seek other opportunities of folks to listen to and say, okay, well, ESPN says that quarterback X is a Hall of Fame talent. I don't agree with it. Oh, podcast Y over here agrees more with my take. Let me continue to listen to their stuff. Maybe your show, like the Last Call podcast here, let me listen to their show and say, "Hey, I agree with what he's doing," and helps raise the smaller ship. It's a rising tide raises everyone type of scenario.
I worry about that. This is getting too. It's almost like it's too big to fail. I mean, obviously, you look around and Netflix is in bed with the NFL heavily. They're doing the documentaries. They're doing quarterback. Oh, by the way, they're doing a Cowboys special, which that's going to be just positive PR spin. A lot of it. Uh,
Mhm.
Apple TV is even in the ballpark where they're doing their documentaries with the 10-part Patriots.
Mhm.
If you follow history, like the East India Trade Company influenced a lot of things. They had power. Is the NFL becoming like that? Because you look and it's like they have their hands in almost every major network: Fox, ABC, CBS, NBC, Amazon Prime,
Right.
Netflix, YouTube, Google. I mean, you hate saying it, but it's almost like they are becoming the more powerful than almost even third world countries because they have so much money, so much influence, and every fan just no matter what they do, whether it's male cheerleaders, whether it's getting involved in politics, whether it's even athletes nearly killing somebody, the NFL is almost like Teflon. It's is
Mhm.
there anything to stop this in terms from NFL, like even now starting to flex its muscles with governments?
Yeah. I, the only thing that would be able to put a stop to that from an NFL standpoint is if another football league like a USFL or an XFL got enough foothold in the market to be an alternative option. It's one of those things that if you have alternative options, you don't get nearly as big, but because NFL is the only game in town, it's NFL or bust. And yes, you have college football, but that is a whole different scenario and a whole different conversation for a whole nother hour podcast of NIL money and things like that. But I think I think the big thing that we also have to think about too is that they are they are bigger than they were 30 years ago. And while that may seem bad, it's also good for the game. 30 years ago, you could tell a person in London, England what the NFL was, and they would look at you sideways. 30 years ago, you could say, "Yeah, I'm an X fan, but I only get to watch the TV. I only get to watch the game when it's on my rabbit ears. But if the game's blacked out because they didn't sell enough tickets or something like that, I can't watch them. Or I'm a Cleveland Browns fan in Indiana. I can't watch Browns games unless I drive 3 hours into Ohio and get into their market." So I think you have to take the good with the bad when you talk about how big the NFL's gotten. I don't think they'll ever get too big for their own britches. I think that they will be able to handle and stabilize things. I think the biggest thing, and this is my hope, is that the reason for this recent expansion of their media rights and things like that, is we're also going to potentially look at expansion of the NFL teams. We're at 32 teams right now. With this expansion, this media takeover, we could expand by another 4 teams. Add 4 more markets. Maybe we add an international market, add a team in Mexico City, a team in London, a team in Germany, things like that, which is the NFL's ultimate goal is to be a worldwide league. It's the National Football League. We want to include more nations, which is why they partnered with the worldwide leader in sports and ESPN, because ESPN's seen all around the globe. So then they're saying, okay, well, our product will now seen all around the globe, and fans will say, man, I really love this NFL stuff. I wish we had our own team in London or Munich or Mexico City. And then that starts the expansion of the league talks.
That's all we have for now. Once again, I want to thank our wonderful the guy who's going to tell it like it is, whether it's with scouting, Cleveland Browns, NFL, and he's going to be even keeled. So if you don't like it, don't blame him. He's trying to educate you. I give you from Spark Scouting and TW Insight. I give you Browns reporter, analyst, and scout. I give you Bill Sparks. Bill, before I let you go, where can fans check you out at? Where is the podcast, Twitter, Instagram, the website? Where can fans get more of your content?
Absolutely. So you can find all of my content over on X at Spark Scouting. Also a writer and analyst for the Right Way Sports Network. That's TWSN.net. You can also find me over on the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft podcast on YouTube.com. NFL Draft Fanatic, no I in Fanatic. I go live on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. or sometimes both, where I talk NFL prospects, I talk NFL draft prospects. This past week on Wednesday, I talked about the impact of second round guarantees and what that could mean for the NFL moving forward.
Bill Sparks, ladies and gentlemen, once again, always honor, pleasure to have you on the show. We come back, a lot more going on here, only on its Last Call. Last Call of the Alcohol, only on the lastcallpodcast.com.